Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Gina Marie Agderian. I am the author of The Letters in the Old House, available on Amazon in paperback and Kindle. I will have a link to purchase the book in the description below. So today is another episode of Book Talk. This is a series where I talk about a book that I recently read, what I enjoyed, what I didn't enjoy, and ultimately help you determine if you would like to read this book. So today we're talking about One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And this is a bit of an older book. This was published in 2016 in comparison, of course, to her other more recent books like Malibu Rising, Daisy Jones and the Six, etc. And it wasn't my favorite, but it wasn't bad, but I did have a couple of gripes with it, which I'll get to in a moment. I will give this book a 3.5 out of 5. So basically the plot point is Emma is married to her husband, Jesse. They've been married for just under a year. They had met in high school. They had started dating in high school and they moved out to California. They got married and they're living the life. They're traveling everywhere. They're happy. Jesse goes on a helicopter ride in Alaska because he's a photographer, and he unfortunately the helicopter crashes. They don't find any survivors. The other people in there, unfortunately, were killed in the helicopter crash, and they assume that Jesse is dead also. So Emma, of course, is devastated, absolutely crushed, like anybody would be, just incredibly heartbroken. And she takes a long time to heal, of course. She takes a couple years. She goes and moves back home to Massachusetts. She's working in her parents' bookstore. And then she runs into her old friend, that's what it says in the back, old friend Sam from high school, who I believe was a year older than her. And he always kind of had a crush on her and was really interested in her, but it just never panned out because she was with Jesse. She starts dating Sam, and eventually they get engaged. Jesse calls Emma one day and says, "Hey, I'm alive. They found me. I was like shipwrecked on this island or helicopter wrecked on this island, and I'm coming home." So it takes a few weeks for him to get medically evaluated and treated and eventually brought home. And now Emma has to decide, what's my life going to look like, because he's still technically my husband, but I also have a life with this wonderful man who I'm now engaged to. And she's changed, of course, since Jesse went missing. She's a different person. She cut her hair. She lives in a different place. It's a totally different life. And so the book centers around, what does she do? Is she going to stay with Sam, or is she going to go back to Jesse? Now, I thought this was a really thought-provoking story, because I'm thinking, okay, while this is incredibly improbable, incredibly improbable, what would you do? I'm married. I've been married to my husband for 9 years. I love him. What would you do? So I actually brought it up to my husband while we were out to dinner recently, and I said, "Oh, I'm reading this book," and I started going into it, and my husband just looks at me like this. He goes, "That's the plot of Castaway with Tom Hanks." And I'm like, "Oh, seriously?" So that's the one very big gripe I have with this book. When I was telling him about it, it's a complete ripoff of Castaway, and I've never seen Castaway, so I wouldn't have known. But it's almost like, if you've seen the movie Castaway, according to my husband anyway, it's almost like the Castaway told by the wife's point of view, because the same thing happens. Like, Tom Hanks is with this woman, he goes missing, he comes back, she now is with another guy, she has a child. But I thought it was a good thought-provoking story, but apparently it's been done already, just from a different point of view. So it felt like a bit of a ripoff of another story, and I get that nothing is ever going to be completely original, but there were so many similarities and details that I'm not going to give away because this is a spoiler-free review, but it really just made me nuts. The other thing too was, if somebody has been stranded on an island and has been exposed to the elements and the mental and physical torture that this man, Jesse, had been exposed to for several years, one would think that he would need therapy. And there's really no mention of like him getting therapy or wanting to go for therapy or any sort of PTSD, which I found really odd. It was almost like he was in a hospital for a few weeks. He gets treated for, sun damage and all sorts of issues. And then he comes home, but there's no talk of his mental and emotional state being disrupted. It was just very, very weird. The other thing too was, I don't know how it works legally. If somebody is presumed dead, is the marriage dissolved? Like, was she officially a widow even though he comes back, or do they have to get divorced? It was not very clear. And I get that wasn't really the point of the book, but there were certain details that I felt like could have been fleshed out a little bit more that I would have liked to have like understood, just because it just felt almost like they were boyfriend and girlfriend and she's just trying to choose, where there's really no commitment or no contract, because marriage is a contract that she's in. It was just very, very strange. And there was no talk of that at all. And that just made me a little bit nuts. But it was an interesting book, a thought-provoking book. If you've seen the movie Castaway, you will see a lot of similarities between Castaway and this book. If you have not seen Castaway, which I have not, you may enjoy it more than somebody who has seen it, who might see it as a complete and total ripoff. But not a bad book. Of course, the writing's tight and impeccable, as always with Taylor Jenkins Reid. So not a bad book, just a complete ripoff of Castaway. So One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Let me know in the comment section if you enjoyed this book, did not enjoy this book, and follow me for more book reviews, of course. And as always, guys, happy reading.